Good morning and welcome to Advocates for Angels, Monday morning Facebook Live. I'm Valerie Abrahamian, the IEP Navigator, and I help parents receive the special education program their child needs to thrive, both in school and in life after high school. And this morning's Facebook Live is entitled School Closure and the IEP. What are the advocacy steps you can take when your district fails to meet your child's needs? So right now in virtual schooling, parents, millions of kids across the nation, their district is failing to meet their needs. And I want to give you some good, strong advocacy tools and steps you can take so that you can make sure that your child's IEP is implemented and that your child doesn't fail to receive an education the 2020-2021 school year. So let's start off with the least restrictive environment, LRE. Now, the least restrictive environment is an environment that is most appropriate for your child. And it is to start, the IEP team should look first at the general education classroom. And if they, with all the supports and services that are available to a child under IDEA, and in terms of a free and appropriate public education, if those things in a general education class are not going to meet the needs of your child to be successful to access an education, then they are to look at the resource class or a special day class. So that would be the least restrictive environment, parents. Right now in virtual schooling, there is no least restrictive environment. Everybody's environment is in the home with their mother or a tutor or a caretaker sitting next to the child, assisting the child. So that's the least restrictive environment right now. That brings up a lot of questions in terms of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, in terms of the least restrictive environment. They are not offering the continuum of placement options as identified in the least restrictive environment regulations. So just think about that, okay? When you bring up questions or concerns or make requests to your school district regarding the fact that your child is unable to access an education online, and why is that and what are their needs, how does your child need to be supported in order to access an education in the environment that we find ourselves today, which is the home environment in the virtual model. The next thing would be progress on goals, okay? So is your child making progress on their goals listed in the IEP? Because if they're not, that means your child is not receiving educational benefit, which is a legal term that means that your child is making progress on their goals. And so you have to look at it this way, parents. A general ed typical kiddo that is not on an IEP, teachers expect those children to make 1 year of educational progress every school year as they move from grade to grade. And then as you get up into high school, in order to graduate with a high school diploma, you must pass each class in order to earn the credits to graduate. If your child is not making progress towards their goals and meeting their goals, they're going to continue to fall behind. That remedial gap is going to continue to widen. And by the time they get into junior high and high school, they're going to be so far behind, they won't be able to get a high school diploma. So right now, most kids are not making progress on their goals because we're in a virtual schooling model. So I want you to think about that. Is your child receiving educational benefit, which is a requirement of IDEA? The third thing is accommodations. Accommodations are the supports and services provided to your child that assist your child to make progress towards their goals. So when there's a goal in the IEP, then the team will look at, now how can we support this child to make progress towards that goal and meet that goal by the end of the school year. Those are your accommodations. When are the accommodations being implemented in the virtual schooling model, parents? When are they being implemented? That's right, they're probably not being implemented. The same thing in terms of the goals. When are the goals being implemented, parents? Who's working on the goals? How are they working on the goals? Ask yourself those questions because they're probably not being worked on, unless the goals are embedded within the curriculum that is being taught. Most goals are not being worked on. That is a violation of non-implementation of the IEP, as well as accommodations not being worked on is non-implementation of the IEP. The third thing is aid. If you have an aid on your IEP, where is your aid? Is your aid assisting your child, or is your aid nowhere to be found? Aids still are on the IEP. Aids must continue to support your child to access the curriculum. If they are not providing your child's aid and your aid is not supporting your child, that is a violation of your child's IEP for non-implementation of the aid. Service provision. Every service that is on your IEP, no matter what service it is, it could be speech and language, it could be occupational therapy, it could be autism supports and services, whatever the service is, PT, adaptive physical education, whatever it may be, what is listed on your IEP for the duration and frequency must be implemented. It doesn't matter that we're in a virtual schooling model. The IEP must be implemented as it is written. If you are not receiving the services listed in your IEP, that is a violation of IDEA and a violation for non-implementation of the services. Do not let them decrease your services, parents, because we're in a virtual schooling model. Do not believe when they tell you we can't provide these services because we're in a virtual schooling model now, so we need to decrease them or take them off of the IEP because they can't be done. Everything can be done now. If they can't provide it, then they can have a private agency provide it. Private agencies are seeing children live in person, and private agencies can provide the services listed in your child's IEP. Let's talk about an IEE, or an independent educational assessment, or even a district assessment. Okay, so assessments. Right now, many school districts are just simply saying, we're not doing assessments in school until school reopens. That is a violation of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act federal law. Secretary DeVos did not waive IDEA during this time. Last March, she clearly stated, it was March 27th, in the CARES Act, she clearly stated there are no waivers to IDEA. IDEA must continue to be implemented. A rigorous program, academic educational program must be provided to the maximum extent possible. And so they must continue to offer assessments, they must continue to offer independent educational evaluations, and they must continue to enforce the timelines for both of those things, assessments and an IEE. If timelines are being violated, that's another violation, a timeline violation and a failure to provide the assessment. So I want you to be aware of that, parents, because there's many districts that are just simply denying assessment at this time. The behavior intervention plans. So if your child has a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, in their IEP because your child has behaviors that impede their education, behavior intervention plans must continue to be implemented. Those goals in your plan must continue to be worked on across all settings with all service providers and educators. When is that happening, parents, in the virtual model? If your BIP is not being worked on, that's a violation for not implementing the BIP. Let's talk about collaboration between the IEP team. There's always a section in your accommodations page that typically says collaboration between the team. So between your teachers and the service providers and your case carrier, and they need to collaborate together regarding your child's goals and the present levels of performance and how your child's doing. There's always some time, typically, I shouldn't say always, but typically it's best practices to have that listed. When are they doing that, parents? When are they collaborating to talk about your child in the virtual model. It's probably not happening. That's also non-implementation, a violation of your IEP. Let's talk about compensatory education. So many parents are requesting compensatory education for March, April, May, and June when the districts failed to implement IEPs, and many school districts are simply flat out denying compensatory services or coming to a agreement on how they are going to recoup those services and make up for how your child has regressed and how they've lost their skills. So that is not acceptable. They did not implement the IEP, and you need to think about what steps you're going to take to appeal their denials when they are not willing to create a plan on how they are going to restore that academic instruction time and your child's services. A recovery plan. Okay, so let's talk about IEP meetings. Last April, May, and June, March, April, May, and June, IEP meetings were simply waived. They simply were not done. That is a violation of IEP timelines. IEPs must, as I said, there were no waivers. No waivers. So if you had an annual IEP, a triennial IEP, a transition IEP, and they didn't provide it for you, that's a violation of the timeline for an IEP. If they continue to delay your child's IEP this school year and not have it immediately after school starts, not 30 days after, 6 weeks after, 2 months after, they're going to make up for the IEP they didn't give you in March, April, May, and June. That's not a reasonable time frame to make up for what the IEP they didn't give you back then. Timeline violation. Okay. Academic instructional minutes for a minimum day this school year. There are requirements that teachers must provide a certain amount of minutes per day, depending on your child's grade. So if they don't provide those academic instructional minutes, that is also a violation of providing a rigorous education with instructional time and minutes this school year. Parents, you need to know, I've been talking about that over the past few weeks, what your minutes are. Now they have cut down the full day to a minimum school day, so it's a half day, but that half school day must be offered by your teacher in instructional minutes. That doesn't mean that your teacher can come online and teach for 10 or 15 minutes and then go away and have your child be independent learning and studying without the supervision of a teacher during those instructional minutes. So think about that. Also, the Congress stated that school districts that fail to meet the annual instructional minute daily requirements in a fiscal year will be subject to a fiscal penalty. So they really want that enforced, parents, that your instructional academic minutes for your child be provided by teachers on a daily basis. This is every day. So basically, parents, all of those things, which is basically the IEP, and IDEA, which all make up FAPE, a free and appropriate public education for your child, are being violated at this time while we're in virtual schooling. And bills that are written by states or the Senate do not trump federal law. So at one time, the Senate Bill 117 was written on March 17th, which did offer temporary waivers. But that was quickly addressed by Secretary DeVos when she wrote the CARES Act on March 27th, which she clearly stated there are no waivers, which superseded and trumped the Senate Bill 117. However, there are many school districts that are still citing Senate Bill 117 and saying that they don't have to do those things listed in that bill. That is unlawful and it's not correct. Yet parents are buying it and believing it and letting districts dismantle their child's IEP and violate their child's rights. So Parents, if the school district, they cannot change or modify your child's IEP without providing you a prior written notice, a PWN, which gives you the opportunity to deny it, to disagree with it, and to say stay put is in place. Stay put means that your last IEP remains in effect, your last signed IEP remains in effect until you can come to a resolution on your disagreement of what they want to change or decrease, or however, whatever changes they want to make to your child's IEP. But parents, if you don't know these things, you are going to allow them to dismantle your child's IEP. So that's why it's so important for you to learn your rights, to learn what's happening right now, to learn all of these things and be aware of what's happening in this virtual schooling model. Because students on IEPs are the most vulnerable population. Our kids need these supports and services and need their IEP, or they are going to continue to lose skills and regress. And we've worked so hard to get them to where they are. And, within we've already gone 6 months without receiving our IEP. And now we're going to continue into this school year continuing to not receive the IEP if parents don't learn how to hold their local school district accountable. So flexible and creative parents, and this is an unprecedented time. We didn't know it was going to happen. We're doing the best we can. Secretary DeVos said we need to be flexible and creative. They've had 6 months, parents. It's not unprecedented anymore. We're in it. They've had billions of dollars provided across the nation to school districts to provide devices, to provide training, technology training, to get the teachers trained and ready to go, to buy programs, technology programs, and to be ready for the 2020-2021 school year. However, every one of those things I just stated are continuing to be violated to today. School districts are obligated, parents, and it is their duty to enforce the IDEA regulations. But they're not going to do that if, parents, you don't know how to hold them accountable and obligated to meet their duty. Your child is entitled a FAPE, a free appropriate public education, in the least restrictive environment appropriate, and to the maximum extent possible, they are to provide that, even in a virtual schooling model, parents. So parents, if you continue to acquiesce by not advocating for the rights of your child, then school districts are going to continue to dismantle IDEA and your child's IEP. And that is my message to you today, to really encourage, support, and a call to action to parents to learn to advocate, learn to protect the rights of your child, and don't let your local school district fail to provide and implement your child's IEP. So thank you, parents. Stay well. God bless, and I'll see you next Monday morning on my next Facebook Live.